Hey everybody, my name is Alan Childs of the New York City-based rock band Now, and I wanted to do a cover video of the 3 Let It Be solos. As some of you know, there have been 3 different versions of the Let It Be solo released on 3 different versions of the song. That's the single version, the album version, and the Let It Be Naked version in chronological order. And I thought I would analyze the 3 solos and talk about why I like the different versions more or less, the pros and cons. But before I get into that, I wanted to tell the story of how I came to discover that there were 3 different versions. It was a really fun moment that was somewhat formative in my Beatles fanship and really love of music. So when I turned 14, I was given the Beatles' Red and Blue Greatest Hits albums for my birthday. And I was also given the 4-CD Led Zeppelin box set. Those are my 2 big presents. And needless to say, that was a life-changing birthday for me. And I played the Red and Blue albums over and over, backwards and forwards for several years. And Let It Be is on the later years Blue Greatest Hits album. It's the single version that's on that compilation. So that's the one that I first heard and became acquainted with. And I love the song, Let It Be. It's emotional. The lyrics are beautiful. I found out later on that the song is about a dream that Paul McCartney had in which his mother, who had passed away long before, visited him in a dream and gave some reassuring words. It's so powerful. Others interpret it as being a reference to the Virgin Mary, which is something Paul, I'm sure, intentionally left open. So there are all sorts of spiritual things you can take from the song, and I always loved it very much. I had a problem, though, with the guitar solo. It was fine, but I always thought that that guitar solo was just underwhelming. You know, the song is so emotional and just passionate, and there's that climactic descending organ line that comes down leading to this opening where you're just waiting for the guitar to come screaming in. I always thought that the song was just begging for a powerful guitar solo with a lot of passion and really just taking us to another place. And the one that I heard was fine, but I thought it was kind of lame. And it turns out that the classic rock station that I grew up listening to always played the single version of the song, which is the same one that was on the Blue album. So that's the only one that I knew of that existed. So a few years later, like 5 years later, I was going through my second Beatles phase. And as many of us have, I've had several intense Beatles phases in my life. And during this phase, I purchased Let It Be Naked. I was getting all the studio albums, and Let It Be Naked was pretty new. I'm sure many of you know this, but it's a version that Paul McCartney helmed that tries to put the mixes and production of the songs back to the more stripped down way that Paul McCartney had always imagined the album would be before Phil Spector got a hold of it and put all the famous strings and layers of instruments on it, which Paul McCartney especially never liked on some of the songs. So that version had a different guitar solo, which I also covered at the start of the video. And it's pretty cool. It has some neat lines, and I thought, okay, this is neat. It's cool to have a different solo that I think is a little better than the previous one, but it still didn't have that punch, that just going for it feeling of rawness and letting it all hang out that I thought the song called for. And a few years after that, I don't even remember exactly when, I was listening to the original album of Let It Be. And, you know, all the songs have been released in so many different formats and on different compilations that I knew all the songs on Let It Be, and I just had never happened to purchase the original version of the album. I didn't see a reason why, really. But I was listening to it, I think, to compare the mixes from Let It Be Naked, which I loved. Also, I loved Let It Be Naked, so I didn't really see a reason to change. So I was comparing the mixes, and I think I wanted to listen to like Dig It and Maggie May and the Throwaway songs. And Let It Be came on, and I was just listening, and all of a sudden, you know, it got to the solo part, and I was expecting to hear the fairly boring solo that I had always heard. But no, that's when it happened. That's when I heard George Harrison lead in with the... And the tone was different. The feeling was different. There was just a seriousness to it, and an intentionality to it, and an aggressiveness to it. And immediately the hair stood up on my body. I was like, oh my God, what is this? What is this solo? And like, I could barely wrap my head around it. I mean, the two thoughts that I was having consciously were, one, this is the solo that I have been looking for the last 10 years. This is the one that I'd always imagined. It was exactly what I'd hoped for, with the bends, with the build-up, with that big note at the end, as the solo's winding down, all of those moments of emotion that I had been craving that fit the song so perfectly. It was exactly what I'd always dreamed of. So that was the first thought. And then the second thought was, this has been here the whole time. How have I been missing this? And as my story illustrates, I just somehow had not heard that version despite being a hardcore Beatles fan for 10 years, which is kind of weird. And you could maybe say, how hardcore were you if you hadn't heard that yet? But this was, the internet was early, and I don't know, it just escaped me. And it's unfortunate, but it was also so cool that it led to that moment of discovery. And of course, I've been obsessed with that version of the solo ever since, and it has such a special place in my heart because I was deprived of it. I was deprived of the magic of the real solo, the gutsy, intense solo that the song deserves. So I'm sure you can tell from this story that that's my favorite one. So I'm going to go through in order of my preference and just play some of the lines and talk about what George Harrison is doing, what works, what doesn't work, what I think could be improved, and stuff like that is kind of a lesson thing. So you can think about these ideas in your own solos and your own compositions, whether you're improvising or writing a solo or just writing any kind of music. These ideas are really important, and you'll use them. Solo number 1, the single version. The first thing we got to talk about is the tone, which I don't like at all. I tried to imitate it when I did the cover at the start of the video. Right now I'm just playing through my practice amp, but it has that phaser effect on it. I think it's a phaser. It's one of those, modulating things. I'm not great with effect names, but I think it's a phaser, and it just isn't called for in this song, in my opinion. It's kind of out of nowhere. Those effects can be cool in certain contexts, in limited contexts, in something psychedelic or in some fusion or something, but Let It Be is such a pure, classic sound with the piano and the vulnerable vocals and lyrics. The mood of the song is one of sincerity, and I think that it's only in believing Paul's sincerity that the song is moving. And I think, the lyrics could be seen as cliche even, or overly cheesy if it weren't for such a convincing sincerity to an authenticity to the music and the vocals and all of that. So I just think that having a weird effect on the guitar is not the mood of the song, doesn't jive with its overall feel or theme. And it also makes the pitch sound strange. I don't think that George's guitar is out of tune, but especially at the end of the first line, the last note he plays, it sounds out of tune, and maybe he was bending the string accidentally a little bit. I think I would have noticed if the guitar were out of tune. I haven't obsessively looked into that, but Also, the phaser itself makes the pitch sound strange. So again, I can't tell if it's a little bit of the guitar or George's being a little sloppy, or if it's just the phaser, but it sounds a little weird to me. So that's a huge knock right there on the single version. The first line is, it's fine. It has a pickup, as do all of the versions of the Let It Be solo. And if you don't know what a pickup is when the first line of a solo or of a melody or some sort of idea starts before the downbeat of the first measure of that section, or like before the rest of the band comes in, you know, on the downbeat. So in this case, with those first two notes, the is a pickup, and then the C note, the third note, is on the downbeat. It's a fine opening line. It's a little bit repetitive, and it is very downbeaty, as is the whole solo. There's not, in this version, there's not a lot of rhythmic diversity throughout the solo, but it's a fine opening line. It sets up a couple of rhythmic motifs, and by the way, the whole thing is in the key of C. The whole solo is diatonic to C, as is the case for all three solos. So that's the first line. It's fine. It starts with the pickup. The first real part of the phrase starts on C, and then it goes up, and then it comes back down and ends on the same C note. Nothing wrong with that in a vacuum. So the next line starts off with a little bit more playfulness and a little bit of tension. You know, I find that going back and forth with those minor thirds kind of sets us up with a bit of a tense rock and roll feel, like, you know, something, the energy is going to be building, so I like that. And then it goes up higher than the first line, and then it comes back down to the same C note that this first line started and ended on. So this isn't a problem in and of itself. I mean, you could have a whole solo that starts and ends on the same line, and it could be great. But in this case, I do find the single version of the solo to be a little bit repetitive, and it just doesn't really go anywhere. In this case, literally, but also, you know, emotionally, metaphorically, it just doesn't really take me on much of a journey. So I don't love that it goes back down to that C note, but that's okay. Let's see what he plays next. And the next idea is pretty cool. So we get this little motif that's kind of playful. I like that line. It's got this repeating idea with the slides on each line. 3 different times he does the slide up and then it goes back down. And it just adds some rhythmic excitement and brings some more energy into the solo. And again, the motif part is cool, that he kind of repeats a similar idea, and it feels like we've sort of gone someplace. And then the last line, it's all right. It goes even higher still. And it's nice that the last line of the solo peaks at the highest note with that, that's the highest note that we play in this solo. So that's a nice arc, I suppose. And then it goes back down and ends on C yet again. This time it's a higher C, 1 octave up. So it's not like nothing happens in the solo. I mean, if we dig into it, some stuff happens, but I just don't think it goes in a lot of interesting directions. I think that so much more could have been done. And George himself might have felt that way, because I believe he went back later and recorded the album version, which we'll get to in a minute. I wonder if George himself didn't think, man, you know, what I played on the first version is kind of lame, and I know I can do more, and let me bring some heat and some lyricism and some intensity to another take. And let me say that when I say the solo's lame, I mean, it is a little bit lame, but this is by the standard of George Harrison, who's a fantastic guitarist at this point in his career. I'm judging him against, Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page or even, a jazz great, a John Scofield or whoever you like in the jazz world. I'm judging him against an objective standard of excellence that is one he has shown he's capable of rising to at this point in his career. Early on, he wasn't an outstanding guitarist. He probably didn't bring the most to the band compared to the other guys, but he still played some really tasty stuff. He definitely had some interesting and catchy solos, and he definitely was very talented all throughout. But by this point in his career, he's playing the solo to Something, which is a killer solo. It's interesting, it's lyrical, it's playful, it expresses so much emotion. Even the solo of Octopus's Garden is fantastic. It's so much fun. It's sassy and just has a lot of feeling in it. It's fun. It's interesting. So that's the standard that I'm judging him by. It's a solid solo that many people would kill to be able to play, but it's just not as good as he could have done, which is proven because he did a lot better later. Moving on to Let It Be Naked, this version has a better tone. It has a little bit of phaser, but it's less to the point that it's not nearly as distracting as the single version, which I find just immediately off-putting. This one's not nearly as extreme, and there's a little more grit to the tone, so I like the tone a lot better. And, tone's in your fingers, and it does matter more what you play than what your tone is, but music is sound, and tone matters a lot. So you want to put yourself in a position to move people by having good tone, not only objectively, but for the purpose of the context and the song and the emotion that you're trying to convey. So this one starts off pretty similarly. It's got a pickup as well, but it's a longer pickup. This one is, instead of just, with that kind of start, with that pickup just being, this one is, and then there's the one. So we got a little bit of a longer pickup. I'll nod my head on the one. So that first line has some playfulness in it. It's not quite as locked in rhythm. It's not as expected. It's both rhythmically and melodically. There's more diversions. It's not just kind of going up and down the scale as much as the first line of the single version. So I like it better. Although I'll say here that the good moments of both the single and the naked version are mostly moments of playfulness, and I love playfulness in guitar solos and in music. However, playfulness isn't really the vibe of Let It Be, in my opinion, so that's another reason that even the strengths of these two solos don't elevate them to the level that they could be. But it's still cool to have something playful rather than boring, probably. So we've got some playfulness in there. And again, it all depends on what comes next. We can't evaluate any line without looking at the solo overall and where it's going to go. So that's the first line. And then after that, there's a pickup for line 2. He goes, that A note that I hit there is a pickup into the next line. So we've got that's fine. It continues to go higher. I do like that pickup. I think it kind of ties things together and gives us a little bit of tension as we're going into the next line. So the first half of the solo is, it's all right. Then this next part is pretty cool. He sets up a playful motif. I like that, and it's similar to the single version, but instead of continuing to go up, just changing where the motif is and having the start and end be higher, it ends on the same C note twice. Instead of doing something like this that would be more expected, where the whole thing shifts up. So I think it's cool. It shows some creativity to go back to the same note like that and build it up that way. But as I said before, that playful feel, while in a vacuum, it's something that I love in music and in solos. It's not really fitting with the mood, in my opinion. So to continue through the rest of the line, here's the whole thing from start to finish. That's probably my favorite part, given the nature of the song and what the song needs, of either of the first two solos. I love the way it slides up unexpectedly, and then it goes to a higher place than before. And then he doubles down and goes even higher with the... Like, it's already a little bit surprising to go up to the C note, and then he immediately goes back up again to the E note. So that's a cool peak to this solo and a very nice moment. The last line of this song starts off with a bit of tension. And I like that he hesitates there a little bit. I think that, as I said in the before, in the first solo, going back and forth with that minor third, I think sets up kind of a rock feel and some tension of, oh, where, you know, we're staying right here, but there's this energy that we know is going to break out, and where are we going to go from here? And the ending's perfectly fine. I like that he ends with some bending there at the end. The first bend is a slow one. If I recall correctly, the second one's pretty quick, like the... And I think that's a nice bit of oomph, a bit of a exclamation point to put on the end. And it does still end just on a C note, an octave from where we started, and that's okay. That's a big overall complaint of mine in the first two solos, is kind of doesn't go all that far in any particular way, emotionally, rhythmically, pitch-wise, but there is development there, and again, holding it to a very, very high standard. Now we get to the real solo, the album solo. It starts off with this awesome pickup. And it sounds even better, you know, with the tone all cooked up. But that, there's so much authority with that. The tone is raunchy. It's aggressive. It's raw. I know George Martin chose the earlier solo, and I think he was happy with it, with the single version. Some could argue this is too raw for Let It Be. I've heard people say that, but I disagree. I think that it's perfect for a very emotional song after that descending organ line. It's a layup. It's a slam dunk to just come out really hot, and that's what George does. In fact, I would go so far as to call this pickup a solo announcement, which is my own little inside joke or inside term with myself for when there's a really epic pickup where you know somebody is about to bring the fire, you know, so it's not just a couple little noodles. It's like, here we go. he's like, boom, like I'm about to just lay it all on the line and give it everything I have. So right away at the end of the first line, we have that bend. And that's something that I think was sorely missing in the first two solos. You know, bending is one of the main ways to give your guitar playing a lot of feeling, a lot of energy. And it's just one of the things guitar is best at, but is best for is that hands-on subtlety. And, you know, in rock and blues and a lot of the best guitar music, the bend is just this very vocal way. It's imitating the human voice. It sounds like a cry or a scream or a whine. And so right away, instead of just having one or two little bends at the end, we right away have this very passionate bend. So if the solo pronouncement wasn't enough for us to be sure, we can now be totally certain that this is going to be a completely different solo, because we've already reached a level of emotion on the first line that we never got in either of the other two solos. So then the bending continues. He does this nice move where you make a bend and then you pick a higher string to add to it. But then the second time he does it, he picks different higher strings, so that's a nice mix-up. And then the rest of the line kind of settles down and goes back to the C. And again, as I said before, everything depends on context. So in this one, it's no problem that we're going back down low and ending on C, because we ended on a different C the first time, and also we get more diversity later on. So moving forward, we really start to build up the tension and emotion. So that line with all those hesitations, we touched on it in the earlier solos, but this one has more. All that line has these kind of moments of hesitation. You can feel the momentum building. You can feel this energy and tension building that's going to be released. And he does release the tension when he plays. So that sounds really resolved, and it is. He's doing, and never before have we gotten up to resolve on this high C, higher C. He does the same lick he does a bajillion times in these solos with the... but this time it's not at the end of the song. It's there. We know there's more to come. So it's like, what's going on? So it almost sounds like that should be the end of the solo, but we know it's not. It's not at the end yet. And then we get that perfect bend. We get the pause, the hesitation. Hesitation, and then that epic, fierce, screaming bend, way up high, way higher than in the other solos. And you don't have to go up high in a solo, but you know, this song, the way he puts it in there and with the emotion of the song, it's just perfect. And then he ends with a similar lick that we've heard many times before, but there's more good bends in there that aren't always present in the other solos, and it's coming after this tremendous build of tension. So, I mean, just from the pickup and then that bend there alone, this song is in just a totally, this solo is at a totally different level, in my opinion. And I'll never forget when I first heard it, that very first time, and I heard that high bend. It was just like, George, my man, like you killed it. And I can't believe I doubted you. I just didn't know that version was there. He just absolutely hits it out of the park. So that's my analysis of these three versions of the solo. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something that A, will help you in your own playing if you play, and B, just help you enjoy music more. I love when people point out details to me and get into it. is just such a celebration of why we love music. And, you know, I'm never thinking about any of this stuff when I'm listening to music. I'm just enjoying it. But then after, it's like, oh man, that solo just moved me. What is it about that that I loved? And then I go back and I look at it like this and think, okay, how's this built? What's going on? What's working? What didn't work? Why do I like this part? And I hope that you felt my joy and will continue to love music. It's a gift that we can enjoy all the time. How lucky are we? One more thing. My best friend passed away a couple of months ago, and he was a huge Beatles fan, an even bigger one than I am, which is tough because I have a near religious reverence for the Beatles, and they've brought me so much joy. But he knew even more than I did about the Beatles, and this is the kind of video that he would have loved. He loved nerding out and analyzing all the details of the songs and what made them great and what he liked and didn't like and comparing things. And I had him in mind when I made this video because that kind of thing gave us so much joy. So I dedicate this to him. And with that, I'm going to play my own version of a solo just for fun, incorporating some of the techniques that I've talked about. And I don't think I'm going to make a video of it, but I'm going to play you out with that. And just thinking about my best friend, sending him a lot of love. And I hope you enjoy the music and all the things that you love with the people you love as much as you can. It's really a precious thing that we get to share. So with that, thanks so much for watching.